I'd like to continue our discussion about racism and diversity in the classroom and some of the difficulties and challenges involved with that. The New York State Regents issued guidelines about it that really outline certain principles. But let's look at some of the concerns that parents have. So, for example, parents are concerned that institutional racism is being taught, and they object to the fact that there is institutional racism in the United States. They're perfectly willing to accept that there are individual instances of racism, but they don't feel that our institutions, as institutions, embody racism. Another term that is used is systematic racism, that there is racism in our systems. So they're concerned that this might be presented to our students and that their children will be indoctrinated in that and get the wrong idea about America and start to feel badly about America, not feel that America is the great country that it is, the country of freedom, the great shining light on the hill, the beacon for democracy. Another concern that parents have is that police violence is being taught, and they're afraid that their children will get the idea that all police are mean, that police just are out to shoot you, that they stop you for no reason, that they are corrupt, and certainly they don't want that being taught because they feel that their children obviously will get a bad idea about the police, have negative feelings about the police. And a lot of it stemmed from the death of George Floyd, the fact that he was killed in the brutal way that he was killed by the white police officer, Derek Chauvin. So they're concerned that then all police will be treated in this way and that their children will get the idea that police are not good, and they certainly don't want that presented to their children. Another objection that many parents have is the objection of white privilege, and the fact that if white privilege is being taught, they feel that this would be bad and harmful because their children will get the idea that they are privileged if they're white, but if they're black, they're not. If they're brown, they're not. If they're Asian, they're not privileged, and that the deck is sort of stacked against people from other racial and ethnic groups, and they don't want their children exposed to the concept of white privilege. They don't feel it's fair, they don't feel it's accurate, and so they don't want that presented to their children. Another thing that they would object to is implicit bias, that there is bias against people of certain racial groups. They do not want that presented to their children, that there is any bias against somebody who is of a different ethnic group, a different racial group, a different religious group, a different sexual orientation. They don't want that presented to their children. They don't feel it's fair. They feel that there might be some individual examples of that, of course, but they don't feel that as a general thing that it should be taught, that it's something that is very pervasive in our society. Another concept that they feel is objectionable, and that some school districts might be teaching this, is that America is not a meritocracy. And the belief of these parents is that America is very much a meritocracy, that if you want to get ahead, you have to work hard, that there is a level playing field, that everyone has an equal opportunity in America, that no one is really discriminated against, that if you put your effort in, you're going to see the results. They want that being taught. And when certain teachers or certain positions or certain books, articles attack that, they don't want that presented to their children because they don't feel it is accurate. They feel that America is a meritocracy. The thought is that these are Marxist ideas and that they are being infiltrated under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. So they feel that the sort of under the radar, these ideas are kind of snuck into the curriculum, and that their children are being indoctrinated into these ideas. And even though the Regents' guidelines call for no indoctrination, they feel that this is what is happening, and they are objecting to that. They don't feel it is fair. Additional concerns of parents, they're against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're against CRT, critical race theory, multiculturalism, the teaching of global warming, and any distortion of American history. And their feeling is that a lot of these things are being taught, that maybe this critical race theory itself isn't being taught since it's something that is on the graduate school level, but these other things are sort of infiltrating into the curriculum, and they're giving a distorted idea of what America and American history is all about. The Regents document is called Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework. It was released in 2018, and it asserts that the notion of American meritocracy is flawed. So it actually says that American meritocracy certainly is there to a certain extent, but it is a flawed notion because there are many examples where this meritocracy idea does not hold, and so this argument is really about should meritocracy be presented, or should it not be presented, or should it be presented in maybe a modified way? That would be the area for discussion. And they say in their guidance that they issued in 2018, they say a complex system of biases and structural inequities is at play, deeply rooted in our country's history, culture, and institutions, which routinely confers advantage and disadvantage based on linguistic background, gender, skin color, and other characteristics. So the Regents are presenting this and saying, well, there are these factors that are present that are significant factors that certainly influence this notion of meritocracy. There are factors in our culture, there are factors in our institutions, and they are there structurally. So this is where the argument really, and the discussion, of course, would be. Are there these inequities? Are there these structural inequities? Does it affect this concept of meritocracy? How should that be presented? How should it be discussed? And really what it gets down to is in terms of, I would think, evidence. What evidence do we have of that? What is the factual record? How do you establish that? What are you presenting historically? Maybe there are things in the past that certainly could be easily agreed upon. You know, certainly slavery, Jim Crow, all of these things were structural inequities. But how does this affect us today? What are the examples? How significant is it? How does it impact on this concept of meritocracy? That would be the area of a discussion with these two camps. The one camp is saying it is a meritocracy. The other is saying, yes, there are certainly many aspects of a meritocracy. We do have to, work hard and everything, but there are also these other structural inequities. So I think the discussion would be there, and it's a healthy discussion to have so that we can come to some sort of reasonable conclusion about how this should be presented to children. Certainly, as the Regent says in their guidelines, we want to avoid indoctrination, but we certainly don't want to be ignorant of the realities that people face. So I think it's something that certainly is worth discussing, and we'll get into some other aspects of this discussion in our third part.